Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Selling with Love podcast. I'm so excited about the conversation we're going to have today with Dr. Jenelle Kim. And if you're not familiar with her, not someone you would have been exposed to if you're looking at books on sales or business, but if you've been somebody looking at medicine, looking at living meditations, looking at bringing movement into your life, being healthy, and really doing it in a way that promotes longevity, health, and well-being, you would have been exposed to this herbologist, practitioner of martial arts, and practitioner of the Tao. You might recognize her from her international best-selling book, Myeong-sung, The Korean Art of Living Meditation. She's devoted to the integration of philosophy, ancient medical wisdom, expertise of East Asia with the advancements of modern life and medicine to the West, has been actually bringing that to the world. You might have seen her on massive publications such as Forbes, Well and Good, Meditation Magazine, and she has been going around the world helping individuals to really bring in philosophies and practices to make them live longer, be healthy, and happy in the process. She's been recognized as Global Woman Entrepreneur of the Year last year and Kindred Spirit Emerging Voices Award. She's an incredible entrepreneur, has brought business and her products into brands such as Ritz-Carlton, Four Seasons. The list goes on, but we're going to hear from herself. Dr. Jenelle Kim, welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Oh, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And thank you for the beautiful and very long introduction. I was joking.
Well, a proper introduction to someone who has done some incredible things. And I think I'll start with the award, Global Women Entrepreneur of the Year Award. That's a fascinating award to receive. How did you feel getting that? And what do you think are the things that you've done over the last year that you're like, yeah, of course I got that award?
Well, I appreciate that very much. You know, Jason, the first thing that comes to mind that I just want to acknowledge, because I have a feeling, especially the people who are in your community, certainly in mine, it's like we are all want to achieve a lot and set out to do so. And I have to say, you know, you this award meant so much to me. But then you keep moving. And quite frankly, I haven't even thought about it in some time. So I'm grateful for you to bring that back to my attention and to share that, because yes, it's important to take these moments and be present in them. In the past year, really my entire life, I think the way I would like to answer your question and begin our entire conversation, what is basically the most important to me, if I may, is that I come from a very long lineage. I'm ninth generation in my lineage of studying as a doctor, as a martial artist, basically, and in living meditation, which is the mindset, which very much applies to business as well, as far as I'm concerned, and what's been passed down. And so I'm also the very first woman in my lineage to be the guardian of the formulas. In many ways, this philosophy, you know, movement included as part of the medicine of keeping ourselves young, healthy, you know, vibrant. And so that to me is the most important thing that I will ever do in this life and what I committed to. But certainly, you know, running businesses, being a mom of two young boys, being married for over 20 years, my husband, who's also my business partner, you know, being a part of my community, those are the things. And working with such amazing clients that are carried in some of the places that you said we make the formulas for them, kind of behind the scenes, but educating around the world, all of these opportunities I'm incredibly grateful for. And I hope that I exemplify, you know, this incredible title or whatever you want to call it.
They often say, you know, success leaves clues. And obviously you've been getting these awards, you've been having amazing success in what you're doing. And what I like particularly is the way that you're bringing this forward. And I think in a world that's really feeling like we need to go and get, and it seems like we're overworking, doing a million things, it seems like you have a way of approaching the way you do your business, the way you design your products, that is a little more balanced, or at least I would add a lot more conscious and deliberate in the way that you create those. And I would like to speak to that on how do you find that the style of how you approach things using your methodology is very different than what we see in the modern world today that seems to be advocated.
I appreciate that very much. And yes, it is a very important part of my life that is directly rooted in the philosophy, that third pillar. I speak on what I call the three pillars, the three M's: medicine, movement, and mindset, as I briefly mentioned. And ultimately, you already said it naturally, that it really, truly is all about balance. It is the understanding, no matter what, and this is what I was saying, applies to business, it applies to our health, it applies to parenting, relationships. There is nowhere that it doesn't apply, because balancing with life is something that no matter from the moment, even when we're sleeping, we are doing. And that's something that we all, I feel very compelled to to share to the best of my ability that that's something we should be aware of. Because in my personal life, listen, I've come a long way in 20 years. I can't say that I'm 42 right now. I started when I was 19 in like the work world, basically, doing what I'm doing with my lab, which I call my day job, which is where we manufacture our products based on the medicine passed down my lineage. And, at 40, I can say, and with just different challenges and different things that I've seen in life, being a mom, like I said, of two young boys, having a good marriage, having these businesses where I have amazing teams, it is vital to constantly be aware that it is always changing and always a balance. And that helps me a lot. That does very much at this point in my life help me to remain calm and grounded to the best of my ability. Doesn't mean I always am. I have my moments. But at this point in my life, I have chosen, because one of the tenets, the foundations of these principles, I talk about it in 8 keys of living meditation in my book. So they're kind of 8 core principles that I'm sure we'll touch on. But at the root of everything, it really is that if we can remain calm to the best of our ability, no matter what's happening around us, and realize that no matter whatever happens in this life, we are the ones that have the choice of how we wish to respond or react. Right. And I actually, those 2 words, something that I practice in my life, particularly in business, to be honest, because sometimes that can be the most stressful, let's face it, especially as an entrepreneur, for all of those who understand, and I'm sure there's many of you, is that, when you're able to acknowledge that there is overwhelm around and you've walked through enough, or hopefully at some point in your life you realize this too shall pass, you're able to kind of ground. And when you're more calm, you can see more clearly. That's what living meditation is all about. Equals meditation, to purify, to calm ourselves, because by doing so, we have that much greater of a perspective.
I always find when I have these conversations, I'm
Yes.
reminded of that. But in the moments of crises,
Of course.
it doesn't always come naturally, right? The
No.
emotions can come up and get the best of you. And I'd say, maybe on a quick note, would you have anything you recommend for people to have as a tool when you are in these moments of crises, where it's like you just throw the whole rule book out and you start being, reptilian impulsive, and it's almost like you need to have these things in your life that remind you, or practices in your life that remind you that, oh my God, I need to step out. I need to have the perspective
Right.
that, when you're in a calm state, you're like, of course. But when you're not, you
Of
forget
course.
quick.
And the first thing I want to say is acknowledge that we're human and it's okay. I think that we set expectations up for ourselves, and that is also part of being human, and especially those of us who wish to achieve a lot. But at the end of the day, that is part of life. That is part of that balance. And so I do have many practices and tools. In fact, that's exactly what's been handed down in my lineage. That's where those 3 pillars come into play. I also will extend a little bit about, actually, I'll start there because I just brought it up, the responding or reacting. So let's start there for a second, right? So what I was beginning to say, and then wanted to kind of sum it up for a moment there, is that I often will put, even visually, I'll feel, it's hard to put in words, but even those 2 words, I attach personally a feeling towards them. So when I'm in any situation and I'm standing in front of whatever, whether it's a person, a situation, I really will tell myself, all right, Jenelle, are you going to react to this, or are you going to respond? And even the way I'm saying it is, I hope that people can feel or hear what I'm doing there, because we have to help ourselves. We have to have tools to, as you said, acknowledge and then be able to do something about it. So to me, reacting is based on emotion. Now, let me be very clear. We're human beings. It's so important to have emotion and feelings, no doubt about it. But when we let that run our lives, it can be exhausting. It can really throw off our health. It can throw off mind, body, and spirit, our health. And so when we recognize that, okay, here's a situation in front of us. Here's a very tangible practice that we can do. Why I teach movement as one of the pillars, and included in that movement is breath. Okay, so what I teach is Qigong. Maybe we'll get into this, maybe not, but for what it's worth, Qigong is the original breath work. It's the original form of any kind of movement as we know it, as far as I'm concerned, created 10,000 years ago by, the East Asian practitioners of medicine, movement, and mindset, basically. And so I don't want to go too far here, but so that is part of what I call medicine. Right? So just as I would prescribe a formula to someone or create a formula that's found in the world, skincare, internal, movement is also medicine for us. And it is a very quick way to give it, like I said, a tangible response answer to what you're saying is we think, especially in the Western world, if I may, like things have to be so hard or it requires so much. But we have to remember that literally taking a proper breath when we're in any kind of situation, we just did it. In through your nose, into your abdomen first, then having the air fill your chest. It sounds so simple, but this is the most powerful tool that I can share in this moment. Then as you exhale through your mouth, even making a noise. I don't know if everyone can hear me, where you could even do it as if you're blowing through a straw. So I'm literally going to give you all a tool right now. You can do this anywhere. That's the beautiful thing. That one deep breath where you really do feel yourself ground into the earth or whatever, however this resonates with you. But you'll feel what happens is in Eastern medicine, we talk about chi or your vital energy. And so we say that your chi becomes more balanced and settles. Or if you want to think it as your nervous system or your brain waves, you quickly, through even that one breath, settle yourself. And it can take a second. So there's no excuse. Then you realize that I'm in this situation and I have a choice. Because no matter what, at the end of the day, we are in control of only ourselves and nothing else. That's just the way that it goes, when you really come down to it. And so no matter what is in front of us, when we take that breath, we realize this is what stands in front of me. And so how I'm going to move accordingly. But we can see it doesn't always even have to happen that slowly, right? But if we train ourselves to respond in this way, no matter what is happening, even with our kids, this very much applies in business, then I promise that you are able to become that much more grounded, let things not throw you off balance so much, and see more clearly. And so that's I'm kind of going backwards than what I usually do, but I like it because this is like practical information.
And I love making sure we got something to walk away with immediately.
Good.
And
Good. Me too.
I feel like I might misquote this, but I'll do it to the
Please.
best of my remembrance here. But I feel like it's a Navy SEALs quote that says, "In life, we don't rise to the occasion, we fall back to the level of our training." And I think what you're speaking about is doing activities such as Qigong is your basic training around breath and being present and not getting derailed, so that when there's occurrences that happen in the real life, you can fall back to that baseline of just like, hey, catch yourself. And I really like what you're speaking about, react versus respond. That's something I want to bring into my moment of like when I have that, because you always have like that split second of like
Totally.
in the middle of it that you could ask yourself a powerful question. And to me, realizing, okay, react is that kind of uncalculated response that's very primal. But
Yes.
I also know that you're not telling like emotions are bad and we should suppress
Absolutely.
that. So you're actually presenting an alternative, which is respond. Could you speak more about what does a response look like and how different it is than a reaction?
Absolutely. And part of what has been taught to us for literally thousands of years from these ancient masters and teachers coming from my lineage and otherwise is that they really do teach us that responding is all part of that balance. So not to go too far into this, but like I said, all three of these pillars, every part of life really can come down to the way that I resonate and what I come from, the Tao. And so for those of you who are not familiar with the Tao, it's the universe. And the beautiful thing about the Tao and the understanding of the universe is it does not matter how old we are, what our gender is, our ethnicity, our political beliefs, because we're all human. And we're all human in this universe. And there's certain principles. And to me, I was always raised to understand by my greatest teacher, my father, and passed down through my lineage, is that at the end of the day, because we are all human and we are part of this universe, there's certain principles, that's what I was saying. And those principles usually are things that are unchanging. It's just the way equals the Tao. The Tao is translated as the way. And one of the number one things to understand is that first you had the Tao in the universe. This is what the Tao says. And from that came yin and yang. And so I'm sharing this a lot more. Listen, 20 years ago when I talked about these things, literally meditation, plant medicine, herbology, people thought I was crazy. But here we are, right? Natural products. Now it's like the coolest thing since sliced bread. But and also it's been around for thousands upon thousands of years. But when you take the Tao, again, this is like Eastern philosophy and medicine in a couple of seconds here. You have the Tao, and from the Tao in the universe came yin and yang. But this is really important. I find this helps a lot of people, and I could not live without this. Okay. Yin and yang, literally that symbol, which almost everyone is familiar with or has seen before. On one side is black, on one side is white. I like to remember or explain that oftentimes it looks like a fish. And that's important to remember because on the black side, there's a little white dot. that looks kind of like a fish. And on the white side, there's a little black dot. And what that shows us is that no matter whatever happens, that really is the balance that we could even visualize. I know I'm very much that way. Meaning, we have to remember that that dichotomy exists in everything in life. And when we understand that, that means just like there is day and night, literally in nature, there's feminine and masculine. You cannot know success unless you felt failure. You cannot know happiness unless you've had grief and sadness. No matter what, they're always tied, and that's life. And so to some extent, when we acknowledge this and we come across particularly challenging situations, but it occurs when we have beautiful ones as well, always maintaining that balance because then we're not thrown off so much. But when we're in challenging situations, if we remember this truly is part of life, and then we have to do things to help ourselves. And the beautiful thing is you don't have to tell anyone. This happens inside. That's part of the training. We can either do certain training to have good habits or bad habits. And when you go down one path or the other, and sometimes we'll get off track, but we push ourselves back on, know that the way that you go about things and your actions, your thoughts are literally going to make the life. That's how you cultivate life. Right? And remember, one thing that, especially lately, for whatever reason, Jason, well, many reasons, I find myself saying that I'd like to share with everyone, and maybe next year there will be something different. But don't mean to make it sound pessimistic or daunting, but life is short. You know, this is actually something that I didn't share yet. My greatest mentor, my father, passed away very unexpectedly 8 years ago. I was with him. It was one of the most challenging moments I will ever face in my entire life. But at this point, after about 8.5 years, I have found myself saying, which even I was shocked in the beginning, that it was one of the greatest gifts that he ever gave me. What a crazy thing to say. But one of the reasons why I say this and feel it so deeply is that because I truly walked with him, who shared all of these principles with me in the greatest way, that one moment you're here and one moment you're not. And so when you are in any kind of challenging situation at work, particularly when in relationships, right? Particularly with family or loved ones, like you just can't get over this conflict. I have found myself, especially lately, maybe with all the things happening in the world near the holidays right now, that it's so important for us. And I encourage everyone to take a moment, no matter what situation you're in, and ask yourself, does it really matter if I move along this way? Does it really matter for me to prove my point and fight with this person? Is it really important if I were to be gone tomorrow, that this very stressful situation at work, guess what? I still have my family. I'm still here with my loved ones. I'm still in this moment. How much am I going to let that affect my life? Because I am completely in control of that. And that's the way that I wish to kind of share that right now. And I do in my own personal life and what I've seen with thousands upon thousands of people in my life thus far, teaching these principles, it really makes a difference. It changes things because that is ultimately that perspective. That balance is always there. That dichotomy is always moving. Change is the only constant. So
I think this advice comes at a time where I feel anxieties are a little high around the world. You know, as you mentioned, change is a constant, but change is pretty damn fast right now.
yes, I
And
agree. I get goosebumps.
yeah, right. And I recently went through some pretty stressful times in work where a lot of the assumptions I had weren't correct and I had to make some big adjustments. And I remember having some similar feelings in my early 20s when I was in a stressful work situation. And the way that I had responded then, because I did not have tools, was I had to go see a doctor. You know, I was diagnosed with like depression caused by stress. I had to take some medicines for a short amount of time. And I remember while this was rising up within me and I could remember the feelings were coming back, I was like, oh, this isn't the first time I've had these feelings. I was so blessed that I'm equipped with tools since, you know, I've had a journey exploring personal growth of all kinds. And I was like, oh, I've talked about this. Oh, I have tools I can use here. Oh, I can practice breath work. I can do meditation.
Yes.
I spoke with my spouse and I realized that, hey, I don't need to go down a spiral if I actually am
Right.
equipped with the tools. So I'm so grateful you've shared this because for anybody who's in that space, and by the way, just to make it very clear, the best thing that happened to me 20 years ago when this happened, or not 20, 15 years ago, is I did choose to go see a doctor and I did take an action to heal. So I want to make sure that's clearly disclosed. But I was able to be a bit more preventative given that I'm exposed to tools, especially from Eastern philosophies, that really let you catch it much earlier. Now, I want to speak of something that I've picked up on from our conversation so far, because, you know, a lot of people that are feeling an anxiety right now is around indecision. And this is going to change pace real quick, but I think it's going to be important to highlight is you've been in this industry for over 20 years. You mentioned you've started going into this around 19 years old. And what I
Right?
find is a big anxiety for people who are maybe at the early stages of business is they don't have
Yes.
a clear purpose, direction,
Hmm.
or an idea of what should I be doing and putting my energy towards. And I'm wondering for you, because you've come from this ninth generation, there was almost this like, you could walk this path. There was a path that was kind of
Hmm.
shared with you. And I'm wondering if this was fully accepted at the
Yep.
beginning. Did you resist it and try to go your own way? And how did you come to this point where you've embraced that this is the path I'm going to work towards,
Yeah.
on, inherit, and kind of continue that path that has brought you the momentum now?
Yes. Well, I love that question. I appreciate it very much, and I'll answer. And I have two things I wish to share. So the first, and this is on parenting, on everything. Again, it all really does apply when you speak on this foundation. Is this was never forced on me, and it's something particularly as a parent I think about all the time with my two young boys. And my father was so incredibly wise and brilliant. He truly was of the Tao. He was funny and did all the things and was so powerful, but he really did live by the Tao. And one of the things, again, that he never did was force myself, my brother, or my sister into doing this. You're right. I do come from this. And at this point in my life, and actually really only in the last couple of years have I how do I put this in correctly? It's hard to put in words, but it's come to my attention that much more being 40 that I've always been grateful, but a different kind of gratitude. I have been born into this, and I do acknowledge that not many people do. But listen, part of the whole thing is, as I keep saying, we all have a choice. And so my father, although this was part of my lifestyle, very much taught us in all the things I'm saying, the 8 keys of living meditation, the medicine, the movement, it was there. But at the end of the day, I hear him right now, no one can eat for you, right? And so you have to do it yourself. That's as far as it goes. And when for example, as my greatest mentor, when I decided to go down this path at 19, then he stepped in. But if I not, he wouldn't have. Because if I did not make that commitment and my decision myself, then no matter what he ever tried, you can't convince anyone to do anything. Even as your own father, even part of this great lineage, that's the way it works, right? And that very much applies in business and all of the things. So that's the first thing I wish to say. One of the 8 keys that I think of all the time is actually the 8th key of the 8, and it's called Be Like Bamboo. It sounds very mysterious and East Asian. And, that is not a phrase that my ancestors passed down. This is one that I did come up with to name this key and this chapter, because it's the chapters are the keys. But this is something that has helped me so much in life, especially in business. Because yes, when I was really fast forwarding, I was the first daughter. So I was very, traditional, strict upbringing, very academic. I actually thought I was going to go to study Western medicine and was on that path. And then at 19, I saw a few things. Again, I probably saw them my whole life, but for some reason at around that age, it caught my attention. And it was a leap of faith. And that has happened a couple times, especially as an entrepreneur in this life. When you feel those things, and I was always taught as well, there's so many doors of opportunity that come across us in life. And sometimes we don't even see them. But when they do get there, you make that choice. You have to feel it, and it's usually the scariest moments of your life. But for me, what it took is having a lot of faith in a higher power, feeling it deep down inside, knowing that it was scary. For example, jumping to now Eastern medicine because of some situations I saw where it was, basically treating some imbalances that I have never seen with our modern medicine. And I thought, you know what, I have to do something about this. That's ultimately what happened. And I took that leap of faith and started studying Eastern medicine. Okay, this happened again, kind of going down the business path where I thought, okay, no matter what, I think by nature, I don't even know if I shared this, I believe I exemplify East and West, old and new. My mother's American, my father's Korean, just by nature. And being here, I exemplify that. And it was important to me. I knew no matter what I do, I want to integrate that. And this is, remember, at a time 20 plus years ago now, that Eastern medicine, philosophy, none of that, nobody was familiar or comfortable with. Okay. And so I thought I'd have clinics, much like my great grandfather, who my lab I named after, JBK Wellness Labs. So I thought I'd have all these clinics, right? Now, fast forward, all of a sudden, the universe kept kind of putting these things where certain doctors would reach out to me for formulas. It happened to be that one in particular was a dermatologist. For some reason, she was the one that sparked my attention. And once again, I took a leap of faith and had many tears by myself because I was thinking, what is it? This is also what I say. What is it that I want? And let's not forget that phrase, because so often we don't even know what we want. And we keep going and we get confused and we get tangled because we don't even know what it is that we want. in this life. Okay. And so just to kind of move forward and conclude here, that was another time going to that eighth key, be like bamboo, where I could have fought it because I set out to have clinics around, the world as far as I was concerned. And that's what I was doing. But I kept feeling, why is the universe wanting me to make formulas? So I took another leap of faith. And then I changed my perspective. I believe I'm doing this correctly. We started building brands in the beauty industry, spas, resorts, so on and so forth. And then it occurred to me, because I opened myself up, grounded myself, expanded my perspective, living meditation. I was like bamboo, be like bamboo, which I'll say in a moment here. And I realized that why don't I look at it instead of this is not how I'm going to have clinics and treat patients? Why don't I look at it like that now the world can be the clinic? Okay. And what I mean by that, and has never stopped since, and I'm just beginning as far as I'm concerned, is that I now reach people who don't even know that they should be looking down this path. And that's what happened, right? And that's how my whole lab grew and became what it is today. Okay. So in conclusion, be like bamboo, this eighth key, is one of the most important principles I live by in life. Very much in business as well, that we often think, especially in our younger years, and I feel like we both kind of said this with unspoken, Jason, especially when you're younger, we feel we are strong-minded, we're hard workers, this is what I wish to achieve, and nothing is going to stop me. And I very much was this way, still am, but different. In my 20s, I'd bulldoze through, right? But we have to remember that in life, if we don't have flexibility, if we're not able to pivot, you can break. And that's mental health, that's physical health, that's spiritual health, that's business, that's parenting, you name it, relationships. So that visual of bamboo, just always remember, bamboo is so rooted. I used to love the phrase, go with the flow, and I stopped loving that phrase. I still love it, but I started seeing, nope, there's something missing about that as far as I'm concerned, in my humble understanding, that if you just go wherever that's, the flow, just go with the wind, that's that emotion. We just let the whole world run us, and that is exhausting. That will lead to all of the things that make us uncomfortable, anxiety, depression, you name it, okay? But when you're like bamboo, you're rooted. We always keep grounding ourselves into what is important to us. What is it that I want? And that can change, but not to forget that. Who am I? Why am I here? Then, like bamboo, remember this. Bamboo is so flexible. What that means is when any of the storms of life come, bamboo can go, and the wind, let's say, picture these challenges as strong winds. That bamboo can go all the way to the ground because it's so flexible. And when the winds and the storm pass, it can come right back up. It's so strong. Different than being like a hard board. Here's the martial artist in me, right? So we see like the karate chop. Just remember, when you're so rigid and hard, you can break. With the right hit, if you do it too many times. But when you're flexible, you can see things in life. So kind of a long explanation there, but I hope that it resonates very much.
It absolutely does, particularly with the fact that you asked this powerful question, what is it that I want?
Yes.
And there's a little resistance that can come up asking that question, because
absolutely.
if you confront the fact that what you want isn't the path that you're on, you need to choose to make changes, which cannot always be very comfortable. There's big decisions that can happen from just asking that question. And so you've mentioned a few of the pivots that come up for you. I'd be curious to know, how do you evaluate when something comes up when you ask that question, if it's I'm moving with the current storms and flexibility of the bamboo versus that, I might need to unroot this bamboo and plant it in more fertile soil, if that makes sense.
Now I get your question, and it's not an easy one. That's the thing about talking about these things, right? Then we get these questions. That is why it is so important to keep on constantly reflecting. It is kind of a cycle in this way, right? So how do we know? Sometimes we feel it deep down. I don't know how else to say it. That's the truth. And then you have to sit back, and that's when we ask ourselves, what is it that we want? What is it that I want? If I go down this path, and it's like that is the training of the mind, right? So important. We train our bodies. That's the training of the mind. That we constantly keep teaching ourselves to do this. Walk a couple steps. Do your very best. It expands our brain, our IQ in many ways. If I go down this path, I'll give my own example, right, of my life. Okay, so I have these clinics, or let me move forward a little bit. So at first I started helping to build a few brands. So of course, formulating, manufacturing, branding, all the things, logos, website, everything from the ground up. That's how I was raised. Know everything from the ground up in business, because then where everyone's standing. It's a beautiful thing. Don't always share that part. But so that's how I began. Then after a few years, especially when I was about to have my first son, this is about 12, 13 years ago now, I started realizing, again, I kind of felt that thing inside. So we were already making a big push through two brands, right? Or one brand, a couple brands, I can't even remember at this point, where we were making serious headway, being some of the first in natural products, herbal medicine, plant medicine, all of these things. And we were creating, paving a path. And then people started to come to us. Oftentimes the universe will tell us, and you have to pay attention. That's what I was saying. People wanted to start having us make the formulas for them, having me make their own formulas. Well, that's a huge shift. Okay. But I also knew the way that I'm working right now, when I have my child, it's going to be a little bit hard. So a couple of things had to kind of converge. So this is my own example, right, of the things we have to watch out for. And I thought, okay, let me take a step back. This has come up enough that maybe now is the time to start an entire manufacturing facility. Okay. That's a huge feat. My husband and I took a serious leap of faith. We did not have much in the bank, and we decided we're going to go out and we're just going to do this. And I remember staying up nights while I was pregnant with my husband and I, sitting there making logos, coming up with ideas. Part of what I also wish to share, and I was taught that I don't always remember to say, is I was always taught to, when you feel that, you put your mind and your heart into something, especially when you're truly going to go down a path and open up a door. You put your full mind and heart behind that. You immerse yourself in that. That is part of meditation. And that is how the universe kind of can help you along the way. And so that is my example. So how did I know that? Because I observed the type of things that were happening in my life. I also observed where I was at in my life. Something had to shift. How was I going to have it shift? Am I going to wait for someone? Or am I going to do it myself? It depends on what kind of person you are, what matters to you, what is it that you want. For me at that time, when I asked myself, what is it that I want? Well, I want to touch the entire world with my formulas. Working with two companies is not going to allow me to do that in the way that I know that I can. I can see it. I don't know exactly how I'm going to get there. But I know that I want to be one of the number one voices of teaching people what it is important. Now we call it clean beauty, why it is important to have more preventative beauty and wellness, right? Why it's important to put on these formulas, take these certain formulas. And so to me, kind of through a lot of other things, by having a manufacturing lab where we literally work with brands who are all over the globe, that is how I'll do it. And so I just started moving forward and put one foot in front of the other, because that's the only way it happens. So
I absolutely love that story. And what I pick up the most from it is how you always had a good touch point with checking in with yourself and actually translating what is it that you want into something that's a strong vision.
yes.
And when you do that, it seems like you start actually understanding what the next step could be and how does it get you closer to that
Yes.
vision.
Yes.
And I find that that's a practice that sometimes I even struggle with. Actually, I do a lot of like vision boarding and such, and I'm good in all my categories of life, but where I'm usually the weakest is having my own vision, because I find myself very easily taken along with people that have strong visions. I get so attracted to other people's sense of strong vision that makes me want to go and support their vision as opposed to work on my own. And to be honest, it's not been a terrible thing as long as you're picking visions that you can get behind. But how much do you find that you having that clarity of vision has helped you not only with sales, because you've had to sell big contract to these companies,
Yes.
and I'm sure sharing your vision has always been a part of that, but
Yes.
you've also recruited top talent, worked with partners, probably worked with banks.
Yes.
How important would you say that your work around defining, being clear on, refining your vision has helped you on every aspect of business?
No, it's vital. You have to do that. But you said, I think, one of the most important pieces, which actually is key number one. Now we did 8, be like bamboo. Key number 1 is know your true self. Okay, but let's kind of take this into the business aspect. But ultimately, guess what? You are in business. Everything always turns back to you. You are one mind, one body. You have one body in this life, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know, maybe someone can share something else with me. But in this life, this is what we have, right? And so yes, know your true self is a lifelong process. And I love that you're putting it that way, because that's exactly how I go about, particularly in business. You have to keep, let's call it reflecting, constantly keep going back to the drawing board and checking yourself. I cannot tell you, it is such a habit that I have created over probably my whole life in some way, but really since, like I said, in my 20s, when I started going down and entering this world of business as an entrepreneur. But the number of times, maybe I'll pay attention tomorrow, Jason, if I can, or even the rest of today, the number of times I check in with myself, I cannot even imagine. Constantly. It's like a constant internal dialogue, but that is that training of the mind. So you constantly just keep checking in with yourself. Okay, is this leading me down this path? And it's also a fine line. This is where it is. That's life. So many people wish for A plus B equals C, but it doesn't work that way all the time. There are those dichotomies, that black and white, but it's constantly pivoting. And that's what you have to be ready for and open to. And so, yes, the way that you can make sure that to the best of your ability, and we also have to remember that sometimes we're going to get off track, and that's okay. But if we don't catch ourselves, that's where you seriously detour and can fall off a cliff. That's the truth. This is like the warrior in me. It can be a little intense sometimes, but listen, I say it as it is, but we have to always catch ourselves. So, okay, this is where I'm at, is what I'm doing. And actually, this is something, especially right now, I'm going through, because there are so many different projects, for lack of so many different jobs that I'm doing right now, whether I'm educating, whether I'm teaching movement, whether I'm making formulas, just to be very vulnerable and open, rather, of letting everyone know where I personally am at, and how many times I have to go back to the drawing board because then I have amazing teams. And like you said, Jason, so many wonderful ideas. But then I have to think to myself, am I becoming scattered? Or is this on the path that is leading to me to where I wish to be? So it's important not to get scattered as well, I think is very, very vital.
So being on the Selling with Love podcast, I always like to dive into some significant moments in your entrepreneurial journey where sales played a pivotal role into taking you to the next level. Maybe it was closing a big contract, maybe it was, raising a round of funds. And I'd be curious to know, do you have some story of a sale that has happened? How did it unfold? How did you feel? And what changes did it make in the way that you were operating?
Absolutely. And kind of along the lines of what we've been speaking of during our conversation, I can hear my husband say this, and I'm not usually the one to share this, but I certainly will right now for us, is that he will often say, Jenelle can be one of the best, I'll say it as he says it, salespeople I've ever met who does not sell. So and you know what? I understand what he's saying. After many, many years of hearing this, I'm quiet. Like, what is he saying right now? But I get it. And so let me be very clear. And so, of course, he's kind of on the other side of things, where he literally will go out and has more of what we imagine are the, traditional sales type of situations, right? For me, and I think no matter what, it's so incredibly important that why he says this, I do know, is because deep down, I know my product. I know my product. I know the value of my product. My product helps people. Okay, so I'll speak on mine, but no matter what we are selling, deep down, I genuinely am so passionate about it. And passion doesn't even fit. Like I literally personally, people will say to me, Dr. Kim, Jenelle, all the things, like, you are so passionate about this. And sometimes I will just be able to communicate, like, I literally couldn't live without these things. And so when I speak from that place, especially remember how we started this conversation, I'm a human and you're a human. And no matter what, that never changes. And when you can connect on that level, no matter what you're selling, I feel so strong about this, and I wish to share this with you. And so to me, that's like at the core of where I suppose, yes, fine, I am a great saleswoman because I know that you need what I have. Period. End of story. And also, I hold so much accountability to that no matter what I ever put into this world, as far as products, as far as education, as far as movements that I teach, books that I put out, you better believe that I will always do my absolute best to give the highest quality, the most sincere, like truly from my heart. Okay. So that's how, I don't know if everyone answers this way, but that's how I wish to answer. And so there's been several times, and of course, something that crosses my mind, and I hope this answers the question, but certainly it's good to know as an entrepreneur. I remember when we first did open our lab 20 plus years ago. And, we had with a brand that we were working with, I'll never forget, Ritz-Carlton took us in. Okay. And I had to share all the things. So the sales that I had to share at that time, as I've already mentioned, is people did not even care about natural products. Now look at where we're at. People, are you talking about Eastern medicine, Korean beauty, herbal medicine? Now almost everyone is somewhat aware that this exists, especially if you have any understanding of the beauty or wellness industry. But back then, nobody thought anything of this. And so that was the sale that I had to make. This is why it's important. This is where I come from. You might not know it now, but mark my words, in X number of years, here we are now, people are going to only look for, I should never say only, are going to look for natural products that are good for them. They're going to look for products that don't have tons of preservatives and artificial colors and dyes and chemicals. They're going to want to look for the East Asian aspect of beauty and wellness. And so that was the sale that I had to make right? And so going to the actual moment in time when Ritz-Carlton, are you kidding? And even that, you think, oh gosh, now we're in Ritz-Carlton, we've made it. But do you know how hard it is? Or Whole Foods, do you know how hard it is? Because you get in and then you have to do all the work. You think that everything's blowing up. But I do remember that when we got this, we were so excited and we packed up our first little pallet and we have a picture of us standing next to our pallet. And now, why this is funny for what it's worth, and put so much mind and heart into this. And, now we look back and here we're literally pushing out pallets upon pallets, like on an hourly basis of product. So, that will always stick out to me as far as sales and how important it is to truly be rooted in what you do. And maybe it's not so exciting, with much respect, I hope I'm communicating this properly. Not everyone's creating these formulas. I understand that there's also some more mundane type of things. Each of us has a serious role in life. But, even that, we all have a place in what we're doing. We all have such a significant role, even if you think it's not. You are doing something that is part of this whole other line of things that affects everyone. So no matter what you're doing in this life, even if sometimes it starts to feel mundane, and I can understand that too. Just we always have to remember and check in, because if we do lose that spark, it is important to reignite ourselves. Doesn't always mean you have to completely reinvent the wheel, but at least check in and light that fire inside of us, because we're the only people who can do that. So, for ourselves.
Dr. Jenelle Kim, you've actually taken initiative and answered the one question I ask every one of my guests, which is, what does selling with love mean to you? And you've already answered it in your question, in the question I asked just now, which I think is a beautiful way of exemplifying selling with love. And this is why I was so excited of having you on the show, because the way that you've moved forward, what you've created, and everything that you stand for is so close to what we teach in the methodology of selling with love. You're an exemplar of it, where so many people are wondering, like, oh my God, sales is such a bad thing, I don't think I can do it. But you've shown that when you have such a passion for the product, care for the people you're selling it to, and a vision that's pushing you towards what you want to see change in the world, that's when a sales superpower comes out of anybody who's just so well aligned to that. It's been a fantastic conversation, and I want to share some of the things I've picked from our conversation that were the biggest takeaways. For one, we've obviously started on a more personal side, which was we face crises and the world is changing and faster. But every time we come to a moment where maybe anxiety, stress, difficulties arise and we get very emotional, we can always choose to either react or respond. And then when you can have a prompt where you can be like, hey, hold on, we can access one of the quickest tools that's already at our disposal, which is the breath, which is like, why don't you do that? Take that one step, because you can add 1 second of just bringing a bit of rationality to your attempted reaction, and then instead shift towards more of a response to whatever's coming up. And I think that allows you to make powerful decisions, especially in business, but quite frankly, in all elements of life. I really like how you've embedded and shown everybody there's always a moment to choose. And then when we want to make those choices, if we're not clear on what is it that I want, then your choice will not always be rooted with something that takes you closer to what you actually want. And it sounds like you have practices where you constantly reaffirm that question, ask yourself that question, and not being go with the flow, as you said, but rather be like bamboo, which means you still have roots into something. But to know where to plant your tree, if you keep asking yourself, what is it that I want, then at least you'll be planting it within the fertile soil, which things will change, things will move, but rather you still have a strong anchor and you can always build upon that. I love what has happened in your life trajectory, which, you've come from a powerful lineage. You still had to choose to go down that path.
Yes.
But the moment you've made the choice, you can see that every decision from that route became something that's always walking forward and giving you momentum, and you've built something incredible. And what I hope to instill on anybody listening is that you don't need to come from a long lineage, but rather you just need to choose what is it that you want. And when you apply that, then keep walking that path. And the longer you're on that path, you'll see that you start building something incredible as you continuously refine and build on the vision which is one of the key pieces to just build something incredible in the process. Dr. Jenelle Kim, it's been fantastic having this conversation. Thank you for coming on the show. The biggest thing I want to make sure everybody knows is you can pick up a copy of the book, Myeong-sung, The Korean Art of Living Meditation, which I know is being, there's updates coming up, there's a rebrand coming up, all of that. But when you want to go into these principles of movement, living meditation, and medicine, and bringing this into your life, your health will be much higher, which means you'll be much more effective in the way that you operate your business and the way that you enjoy your life as well. Thank you once again for being on the show. It was an absolute pleasure to have this conversation.
Thank you so much, Jason. That meant so much. You are one of the best listeners I've ever come across, and that is a huge, huge thing in my humble opinion. So really appreciate you. So beautifully said.
Thank you so much for listening to the Selling with Love podcast. We have some previous episodes you can tune into right here. And if you prefer the short form content where you get to the point in under 10 minutes, we do have a ton of clips from our best episodes that are being shared on this channel as well. So pick which one supports you the most. And of course, thank you for liking, subscribing, and of course, selling with love.